Hello, everybody. Here I present medical emergencies in dental office. The main motive behind choosing this topic is that medical emergencies can do occur, and oral healthcare professionals need to have appropriate skill, training, equipment available to deal with this potentially life-threatening condition. Myself, Dr. Komla. Let's get into the topic. The contents of the presentation include introduction, which includes a prevention part and a preparation part, most common emergencies that are being encountered in the dental setup, management, conclusion, and finally the references. Coming to the introduction part, what is an emergency? Emergency is nothing but a serious and unexpected situation requiring an immediate action, and a medical emergency is an acute injury or illness that poses an immediate risk to the person's life or a long term health. Now, how to prevent this emergency? Prevention of an emergency could be done by taking a prompt medical history, vigilant prompt recognition of the symptoms, and followed by preparation of the patient on the onset of the emergency, which could lead to a satisfactory outcome. As the saying goes, prevention is always better than cure. The goals of the prevention are a medical history questionnaire, physical examination, and a dialogue history. The core questions that are to be asked before the patient gets in or before the patient is been advised for any dental procedure is that, are you having pain or discomfort at this time? Do you feel nervous about the dental treatment? Have you ever had a bad experience in the dental office? Or are you been hospitalized during the past 2 years? Did you take any drugs or medicines in the past 2 years? Are you been allergic to certain drugs like penicillin, aspirin, codeine, or any other drugs? Did you ever had an excessive bleeding requiring special treatment or history of any medical illness? Finally, a few other questions like when you walk upstairs or take a walk, do you ever have to stop because of the pain in your chest, shortness of breath, or extreme fatigue, which could probably give an indication of the presence of an asthma, COPD, or any lung disorders? Do your ankles swell during the day, which could probably give an indication of the presence of heart failure or a kidney disease? Do you use more than two pillows to sleep? Have you gained or lost more than 10 pounds of weight in the past year? That could probably indicate the presence of few thyroid disorders. And do you ever awaken from sleep due to short of breath? That could give an indication to paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. Are you on special diet? Special diet is nothing but a special form of diet that restricts the intake of certain liquids and certain foods. History of tumor or a malignancy, and a woman should be inquired about their pregnancy. Coming to the physical examination part, it includes checking a few of the vital signs like blood pressure, pulse, respiratory rate, temperature, and weight. Anxiety reduction and the stress reduction protocol has to be followed. This is the popular questionnaire that was been introduced by Corag in 1973. It is nothing but a simple question survey technique where five possible answers were being given for each question and each possible option was been allotted some score. A total of adding up score gives out the level of anxiety that the patient has been suffering from. A total score between 9 to 12 indicates that the patient has been showing moderate levels of anxiety that could probably managed by the dentist, and 13 to 14 indicates the high level of anxiety, and 15 to 20 indicates that the dentist has to refer the patient to the mental health professional for this high levels of anxiety. Let's look into the questionnaire that was been proposed by Korak. The first question is that if you had to go to the dentist tomorrow, how would you feel about it? I would look forward to it as reasonably enjoyable experience. I would not care one way or the other. I would be very uneasy about it, or I would be afraid that it would be unpleasant and painful. The second question goes this way: when you are waiting in the dentist office for your turn in the chair, how would you feel about it? Little relaxed, a little uneasy, tense, anxious, so anxious that I almost break out in sweat or almost feel physically sick. When you are in a dentist chair waiting for him or her to get the drill ready and begin working with your teeth, how would you feel about it? Relaxed, a little uneasy, tense, anxious, so anxious that I almost break out in sweat and or almost feel physically sick. You're in a dentist chair to get your teeth clean while you are waiting and the dentist is getting out the instruments with which to scrape your teeth around your gums. How would you feel about it? Relaxed, a little uneasy, tense, anxious, so anxious that I almost break out in sweat and I almost feel physically sick. In general, how how do you feel, uncomfortable or nervous about receiving a dental treatment? Yes or no? A few signs of anxiety that are been noticed in the patient when he is been seen visiting the reception area are questions to the receptionist regarding the usage of injections and sedation, nervous conversations with that of other patients, sweaty palms. In dental chair, few signs of anxiety that are been noticed in the patient are unnaturally stiff position, playing with a handkerchief, perspiration, nothing but sweating, and few quick answers that are been given out by the patient. Stress reduction protocols are been mentioned here that are to be followed prior to the dental treatment. A few of them are recognize the patient's levels of anxiety before the treatment that has been initiated, pre-medication the evening before and an hour before the dental treatment, probably schedule the appointments in the morning, minimize the waiting time, adequate pain control measures are to be followed, adequate follow-up has to be initiated. And similarly, the stress reduction protocols that are to be followed in a medical risk patient are the following: recognize the patient's medical risk and complete consultation of the medical professional has to be done, schedule the morning appointments, record pre and post operative vitals, adequate pain control, reduce the length of treatment, and the follow up procedures that are to be followed. ASA classification. This is the classification that helps in determining the medical risk assessment in a patient. It was been introduced by American Society of Anesthesiology physical status classification, which has been divided into different classes. It probably helps to give an estimation of the physical status of the patient prior to any procedure, like prior to surgery. The first class includes the healthy patient with no systemic disease, class 2, mild systemic disease with no limits on the activity, class 3, severe systemic disease that limits activity, class 4, severe systemic disease that is life threatening, class 5, a morbid patient who has been not expected to survive without any surgery that has been delivered to him, and E refers to emergency of any kind. The quote or the saying goes on: when you prepare for an emergency, the emergency ceases to exist. BLS is nothing but basic life support. Any medical emergency managed in the following steps, like the initial assessment, that includes observing level of consciousness, skin color, presence or absence of pulse, respiratory movements. If the patient is cautious, put him in the most comfortable position. If there is no pulse or respiration, start BLS, that is the basic life support. It should be done in the following manner. Firstly, clear the airway of denture, foreign bodies such as loose teeth and gauze. Triple maneuver techniques has to be followed. The first step includes the head tilt procedure. In this maneuver, place palm of one hand on patient's forehead and the palm of the other hand supports the patient's neck. With the firm pressure, tilt the head of the patient backwards. The first picture here shows the presence of head tilt technique. Chin lift is the second procedure that has been done in the maneuver, where one hand has been placed under the pony chin and the mandible has been pulled forwards. Jaw thrust is the final step, where the mandible has been pushed forward by the pressure on the mandibular angle. At the same time, the head of the patient should be tilted still backwards. Assess the level of breathing in the patient. If the patient is not breathing, artificial respiration could be initiated. It has been done by providing the victim with the oxygen from the rescuer's exhaled air. It can be done by mouth to nose, mouth to edging bag mask ventilation. After this, check for the carotid pulse. If the pulse has been absent, start external cardiac massage. Position yourself in a kneeling position on the side of the patient. Feel for the lower half of the sternum. Locate an area just left to that. Place heel of one hand on the area and the heel of the other hand on the top of the first hand. Interlock with the fingers. Rescuer should be upright. Apply pressure to depress the sternum by at least 1.5 to 2 inches. Rate of compression should be 60 compressions per minute. Apply 15 compressions followed by 2 ventilations if you are the only rescuer. If it is a team rescue, 5 cardiac compressions followed by 1 ventilation. It should be continued till the appearance of the spontaneous pulse. It has been said that during delivery of the basic life support, a team management approach has to be followed. The team 1 provides BLS, stay with the victim, alert office staff members, and team 2 brings the basic emergency kit and oxygen, check oxygen levels daily, check emergency kit weekly. Team 3 assess the BLS, monitor vitals, prepare emergency drugs, activate emergency medical service, assistance, and maintain records. This is a picture showing the emergency drug kit where it acts as a secondary role to BLS. It is nothing but overall collection of few drugs and equipments that are been highly effective in managing the patient during life-threatening situations. It has been divided up into 4 modules. Module 1 is a basic emergency kit that includes few drugs and critical equipment. Module 2, non-critical drugs and equipment. Module 3, advanced cardiac life support. Module 4 is the antidotal drugs. Now, let's see the most common emergencies that are being encountered in a daily practice. Syncope, which is the most common emergency, hypoglycemia, cardiac arrest, allergies, hyperventilation, seizures, angina, asthmatic attack, and a myocardial infarction. Coming up to the first medical emergency, that is syncope, which has been defined as temporary loss of consciousness that has been caused by the fall in blood pressure. The most common factors that are been involved with are psychogenic factors and non-psychogenic factors. Coming to the psychogenic factors, fright, anxiety, emotional stress, sudden and unexpected pain, sight of blood, surgical or dental instruments. Coming up to the non-psychogenic factors, erect sitting or standing posture, hunger from dieting or a missed meal, exhaustion, poor physical condition, hot, humid, and crowded environment. Coming to the pathophysiological part, whenever there is a stress, there is release of catecholamines. This catecholamines causes peripheral vasodilation, that is, pooling up of the blood in the peripheries do occur, and there is decreased peripheral vascular resistance. Peripheral vascular resistance is nothing but that resistance that has been exerted by the circulatory flow of the blood that in turn creates a blood pressure. Due to this decrease, there is decreased venous return and there is decreased circulatory drop of blood volume. As a result of this, there is activation of the few compensatory mechanisms and significant drop in the cardiac output associated with the fall in the blood pressure below the critical level. Due to all these factors, cerebral ischemia develops. Cerebral ischemia is nothing but a sudden decrease in the rate of blood flow to the brain in order to meet up with few of the metabolic demands, and loss of consciousness develops. Syncope has been divided up into following stages, that is the pre-syncopal stage, syncopal stage, near sudden death, and sudden cardiac death. Symptoms that are been associated with the pre-syncopal stage are the following, like warm feeling in the face and neck, pale or ashen coloration, sweating, feels cold, abdominal discomfort, dizziness, mydriasis, that is pupillary dilatation, yawning, increased heart rate, steady or slight decrease in the blood pressure. Whenever the patient goes into the syncope, it has been associated with loss of consciousness, generalized relaxation of the muscles, bradycardia, that is nothing but a weak and a thready pulse, seizures like twitching of the hands, legs, and the face, eyes open out and gaze up. During post-syncopal period, there is variable period of mental confusion. Obviously, the heart rate increases with a strong rate and rhythm, and the blood pressure backs to normal levels. Management part includes recognize the unconsciousness, shake and shout, look out for lack of responses to sensory stimulation and loss of protective reflexes, inability to maintain a patent airway. The first primary thing to do is to position the patient. The position of the patient is the patient has been positioned with the head placed at a little lower end and the feet end is elevated. This improves the venous return to the brain. Assess and open up the airway by following head tilt, chin lift, jaw thrust procedures. Assess airway patency and breathing by look, listen, feel technique. In this technique, the rescuer leans over the victim by placing his or her ear 1 inch from the nose and the mouth while looking at the victim's chest for spontaneous respiratory movements. Artificial ventilation, it could be delivered by mouth to nose. Assess the circulation and follow the definitive management part. That obviously includes a cotton ball that has been soaked up and a spirit of ammonia placed near the victim's nose. It acts as a respiratory stimulant. Administer atropine if bradycardia persists. During post-syncopal recovery, postpone the dental treatment. Determine the possible precipitating factors that are been associated with it. Delayed recovery, activate emergency medical service. The next medical emergency coming into picture is the postural hypotension. It has been defined as a disorder of an autonomous nervous system. Autonomous nervous system is that part of the nervous system that controls bodily functions which are not cautiously directed, in which the syncope occurs when the patient assumes an upright position. Systolic blood pressure drops by 20 mm or more of Hg, that is especially on standing. And the most important predisposing factors are prolonged period of rest or inadequate postural reflex. Postural reflex is the one that maintains the victim or the patient the reflexes that are been associated with maintaining the upright posture of the body. Pregnancy, advanced age, Addison's disease, physical exhaustion and starvation. Now, this medical emergency could be prevented by taking a careful medical history, physical examination that includes measurement of few of the vital signs like blood pressure, pulse in both supine and the standing position. Standing pulse increases by at least 30 beats per minute. Systolic blood pressure drops by at least 25 mm of Hg and diastolic 10 mm of Hg. A few modifications that are to be done to the dental treatment are slowly reposition to an upright and observation for some time after the treatment. A few of the important clinical manifestations that are being shown in the patient are the above, like loss of consciousness whenever they stand or sit upright, do not exhibit any prodromal signs and symptoms. They may also develop lightheadedness or develop a blurred vision. Blood pressure during the syncopal period has been quiet and consciousness returns rapidly once the patient assumes the supine position. Coming to the pathophysiological part, when the patient has been placed in upright position, the systolic blood pressure drops to 60 mm of Hg. Along with it, the diastolic blood pressure also drops and there is slight changes in the heart rate. Due to these changes in the heart rate, there is decreased flow of blood to the cerebrum below the critical level. As there is decreased flow of blood, the patient may lose consciousness. Once the patient has been placed into the supine position, there is re-establishment of the cerebral blood flow. Management part includes position the patient in a supine position with the feet end elevated. Assess and open the airway, assess the patency of breathing, assess the circulation, that is through palpation of the carotid pulse. Definitive treatment that has been rendered is administer oxygen and monitor few vital signs. When the patient recovers or when the patient regains consciousness, slowly reposition the chair. And in case of delayed recovery, activate the emergency medical service. The next medical emergency coming into picture is an acute adrenal insufficiency. It has been said that it is the third potentially life-threatening situation that has been associated with the loss of consciousness. The condition is uncommon, potentially life-threatening, and it is readily treatable. The most common predisposing factors associated with it are primary adrenal insufficiency, that is Addison's disease, secondary insufficiency, that could be either due to stress, that is either physiologic or psychologic, after bilateral adrenalectomy, after sudden destruction of a pituitary gland, or injury to one or both adrenal glands due to trauma, infection, thrombosis, or a tumor. Prevention of this emergency could be done by taking an appropriate medical history, and the rule of two obviously has to be followed, which is nothing but when a dose of 20 mg of more of cortisone that has been delivered for a period of 2 weeks or longer via oral or parenteral route within the 2 years of dental therapy, the patient should be supplemented with an additional doses of steroids. So the dental therapeutic considerations are like inclusion of additional levels of steroids and the stress reduction protocols are to be followed. Most common clinical manifestations that have been noticed in the patient include weakness, tiredness, fatigue, anorexia, GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, constipation, abdominal pain, diarrhea, craving for salt, postural dizziness, muscle or the joint pain. And the signs include weight loss, hyperpigmentation, vitiligo, calcifications in the auricle, and hypotension, that is systolic blood pressure decreases, which is less than 110, and few laboratory findings like disturbances in the electrolytes where the sodium levels are been decreased, potassium and calcium levels are been elevated, azotemia, that is nothing but elevation of the urea levels in the blood, anemia and eosinophilia. Coming to the pathophysiological mechanism, normally whenever there is stress, higher centers in the brain gets activated like hypothalamus. They release corticotropic releasing hormone, which in turn act on the anterior pituitary and release adrenocorticotropic hormone that acts on the adrenal cortex and releases an endogenous cortisol. In cases of adrenal insufficiency, like the picture that has been shown on the right side, there is insufficient production of a adrenal cortisol due to the suppression of the HPA axis. Management part includes, if in case of the cautious patient, terminate the dental procedure, assess the airway, assess the breathing, palpation for the carotid pulse. Monitor vitals and 100 mg hydrocortisone has to be delivered for every 6 to 8 hours. If in case of an uncautious patient, recognize the condition, assess the airway, breathing, palpate for the pulse, and a BLS is being delivered. The next emergency coming into play is a respiratory distress, which could be due to either foreign body, hyperventilation, or asthma. Let us look into the foreign body obstruction. The causes of it are cave coronary syndrome. It is a syndrome which has been defined as when a large object lodges into the pharynx or the trachea, which causes the near complete airway obstruction. So this goes in this way, like large improperly chewed food, elevated blood alcohol levels, laughing or talking while eating, upper or the lower dentures. And the phases during this airway obstruction are been divided up into three. The first phase lasts for 1 to 3 minutes. There is choking, paradoxical respirations without air movements or voice. Paradoxical respirations is nothing but a respiratory distress that has been associated with damage to the structures that are been involved with the breathing. Vitals like blood pressure and pulse are been elevated. The second phase lasts for 2 to 5 minutes where there is loss of consciousness and decreased BP, pulse, and the respiratory rates. The third phase lasts for greater than 4 to 5 minutes where there is coma, dilated pupils, and no vitals. The 5 classical signs that are been associated with this respiratory distress are inability to speak, breathe, and cough, universal sign of choking, that is nothing but grabbing the throat with both your hands, panic. Partial obstruction has been associated with few symptoms like weak cough, crowing sound on inspiration, paradoxical respiration, absent or altered voice, possible cyanosis, possible lethargy, disorientation. Establishment of emergency airway. It could be done by following non-invasive procedures or few of the invasive procedures. Non-invasive procedures includes back blows, manual thrust, Heimlich's maneuver, chest thrust, or a finger sweep. Back blows is nothing but a strong blow that may be given on the back in between the shoulder blades that would probably facilitate the removal of the foreign object. The picture that has been shown on the left side indicates the back blows, and a picture on the right side indicates chest thrust where 2 fingers are being placed in the middle of the infant's breastbone and give 5 quick downward thrusts. Heimlich's maneuver could be followed where stand behind the patient, encircle the patient with both your arms from behind and interlock with the fingers in front of the sternum. Apply firm constructive upward pressure by squeezing chest with the arms. which in turn increases the intrathoracic pressure and forces foreign body out of the airway. In an unconscious patient, abdominal thrusts are being delivered. This thrust could be done where a sharp, forceful chest compression delivered at the same point as per external cardiac chest compression during the CPR in an effort to clear the foreign body. It could be done even in an unconscious patient. Finger sweep procedures are being done in the cases of unconscious patient where remove any visible object that has been blocking up the airway. In the failure of above mentioned procedures, a few invasive procedures like tracheotomy are being followed where an incision has been placed near the trachea in order to establish the airway. So, finally, coming to the conclusion part, even though dental setup is an inducer of the stress in patients and may cause emergencies in medically compromised patients, wide knowledge over conditions and clinical presentations, usage of drugs and equipment may help in handling the situation and obtain a satisfactory outcome. I would like to end this presentation with a quote saying that medical emergencies by a well prepared dental team can increase the likelihood of satisfactory outcome. Together, everyone achieves more. Thank you.